Hello, everyone. Welcome from far and wide. Welcome back to Black Nerds Matter. Today, our guest is Dr. Stanton Belford, a distinguished professor of biology at Lemoyne-Owen College in Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. Belford has an impressive academic and research background with an expertise in plant molecular biology, bioinformatics, and microbial ecology. He's also an active board member of Black and Marine Science, also known as BIMS, working to amplify Black voices in marine and environmental sciences. Originally from Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Belford brings a unique perspective to his work in STEM, blending his Caribbean roots with a commitment to diversity, mentorship, and scientific excellence. Hey Stan, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Just one correction. I'm currently at the University of Tennessee Southern.
Okay, University of Tennessee Southern. Okay,
Yes.
messed up a little bit
No,
looking
that's all
looking
right.
you up.
Yeah, just an hour south of Nash Vegas.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I got to make sure to do my peer review next time. So yeah, we talked a bit. I talked a bit about your Caribbean roots in the introduction. I was wondering how was it like growing up in Trinidad, and what was home life like for you as a young kid?
Well, I was very fortunate. My dad's side of the family came from the coastal village on the northeastern side of Trinidad, known as Blanchisseuse. We pretty much grew up inland, but every 2 weeks over the summer, we got a chance to visit Blanchisseuse. And it's a coastal village, fishing village. So we were always in the ocean. Had it cool experience to eat bread out of an an exterior clay oven, which is like traditional way back when type type things. We got to be outdoors a lot, got to experience that a lot. So I guess my outdoor as well as my marine outdoor life actually began very early on through my parents.
Okay, sweet. So I imagine that experience was very fruitful to what you're doing now. Like I think about it, I grew up somewhere very dry, so I didn't see water and all that other times, especially grew up in Texas. So that was really crazy for me, and I think it's crazy how I've transitioned from living somewhere like that to doing what I'm doing now. But speaking of transitions, how is it moving from living there to living in Tennessee now, and even just living in America in general?
I got that question a lot. My dad, he first gave me a taste of ocean water. And after I spit it out and was fussing, he said, "No, you will never forget the ocean." So I got that upbringing. I was very fortunate. Dr. Carol Draper, high school biology professor, she actually took us out to the coral reefs in Trinidad. I got to Tennessee on believe it or not, a soccer scholarship. And then through when I finished the undergraduate degree, I forwarded some more to my graduate school level. Went to Middle Tennessee State University. And so when they were talking about a thesis project, there was nothing else I can think of but that on something about coral reefs. And so I sort of reconnected back there. I was fortunate to be mentored by the late Dr. Dawn Phillip of the University of the West Indies. Now, Dr. Phillip, she really, really trained me on field survey and actually hinted on surveying these reefs for a long period of time. So actually, most of the work I do there now is kind of in memory of her because she always wanted to permanently focus on coral reef monitoring. And so I kind of do it as a memory to her because she literally trained me the initial steps of myself being an ocean scientist. Tennessee. Yeah, so I got all the questions during grad school. You doing research on coral reefs? There ain't no reefs in Tennessee. Yeah, but you could jump on a plane to Nashville and be there within half a day. So, that was very, very easy for me to do.
That's wonderful. I just think about you kind of the sum of your parts when it comes to that. People mentor you and they help you get to where you're at, and you kind of try to
Yes.
pay that forward. And so I'm hearing that you were nice with the football. How did that go about? So you kind of like Pele doing your little kicking stuff. You got to college on
Well,
that. Explain
I
to
tell
me
you
how
what,
that went.
well, it was different. So imagine, Caribbean climate, then coming to a temperate climate, actually was better off joining the cross country team to build up my endurance. And that actually really, really helped me in football. Now, I was at one point in time best offensive player because back then I was a bit skinnier and faster. So, you know, fast forward to now, more slower and walking. But, that comes with being a student athlete for one time. I did use that access to actually prolong my academics. And that's really, really helped me to, fast forward into what I've become today. I didn't always know what I wanted to be, but as I went through from undergrad to master's to the PhD program, I think mentorship played a huge role in molding me to the person I am today.
That's awesome. I just think about you talk about the running, you're talking about the sports. I remember we were in the BIMS chat yesterday. They were talking about you said, "Oh, he wins all the games. He does all this stuff." So I could see that competitive nature from you.
Yes.
Probably started off with. I mean, you have to have that nature in you to go collegiate level for anything, especially talking about cross country and all those kind of things. So, what kind of physical activities do you do now in your free time as a professor, if you have any free time as a professor?
Well, so as I'm the program coordinator of the biology program here, so I do a lot, but I don't mind. I do assessment for the program. I do research. I do all the ordering. I do teaching schedules for the professor every semester. Then I have my regular day job teaching. But I value mentoring students the most. At UT Southern or all the University of Tennessee systems, our motto is students first. So I'm at a stage, so I am this semester, I'm finishing my 11th year in academia. And what I've found out through BIMS, believe it or not, through my favorite CEO, Dr. Tiara Moore, I was, you know, on my 10th year and looking for a purpose. And fortunately, through many conversations with her, she played an integral part in, and BIMS altogether played an integral part in now going into my next 10 years of my career. And that is, I think, I know for a fact that my new mission is mentorship, student mentorship.
Okay, you mentioned a bit about that. Do you have any stories or particular moments during your time mentoring where you were like, wow, I love doing this. This is such a big deal. And I'm so happy I'm able to get other people excited about the things that I love.
Well, I think for the most part, to get to the good vibes, you have to talk about the bad vibes. So I've experienced, like many other students I've heard that are in the BIMS membership, just having not great mentorship or mentors at all. So I have experienced that. And I made a decision a long time ago that no one's going to mess with my mentees. And that's the students I train and, to be young scientists. As part of the good vibes part, I can remember the first BIMS week online, Twitter. And I always have to shout out Danny Washington. She gave a workshop on finding your ikigai, finding what your worth is and what you were meant to do. I was fortunate to find that, and it's solely focused on mentorship, mentoring students, the next generation of marine science. And so through BIMS, I've been allowed to do that a lot. And I can't wait for BIMS week in a few weeks to continue that trend. What are you interested in? What hiccups do you go through in terms of students doing, research? How is your mentor to mentee relationship going? And BIMS is an organization that really you can depend on to be like a foundational ear to any issues you have. Not everyone has good mentor mentee relationship in ocean science. BIMS, as well as other programs, has that. There is Miss Minority In shark science, there's BIMS. I mean, there are now a few organizations that are, I should say, places to be who you are, as well as to gain guidance on your next steps.
So we talked a ton about Black and Marine Science, BIMS. What got you connected with them and how'd you find out about BIMS? I know you're part of some of the leadership with the being on the board. How did all that happen?
I was lucky to actually, so during the pandemic, so I have a couple of small oceans here. So I have a 135-gallon marine tank here, a few other tanks. So I actually had to be in the building when everyone was home. I had to come to the building to take care of these different aquariums. And so during that time, I was searching, online social media on best practices, how to teach online, how to keep it interesting. I'm fortunate that it's science because that's very interactive, that's hands-on in the lab. So I stumbled into Black and Marine Science Week. And so it was some very cool workshops they had on online, and then I stayed. They had many opportunities, and they still have opportunities. So I started with BIMS Bites, sharing, sharing 7 to 8 minutes of the science you do. And actually, BIMS pays you to do that. So, I was thinking, well, side hustle, but man, there's a lot of science. There's a lot of Black and Marine science, a lot of, Black ocean scientists. And that was refreshing to see because I can tell you, I was the only, person of color, in scuba class, graduate teacher assistantship. I can tell you this, I'm a first in many things. For example, I did my PhD at Auburn University, first person of color to actually graduate or earn a PhD in curriculum and teaching, the Department of Curriculum and Teaching in the College of Education. So I've been a first to anything, to everything. And so I became more interested in BIMS. So I did a couple of those. Then they were doing online. Okay, so in academia, did a few hosting with that. And then the next year, they had the online BIMS week. I actually did the youth day online. So I got to interview the youngest BIMS member, and that was Addie White. And then, high school scuba divers, in the BIMS immersion program. So eventually, and from what some of the members of BIMS in the leadership group have said is, I was, supporting a lot. I'm always there, BIMS. Okay, what you doing? Hey, you need someone to speak? Yeah, heck yeah. And so they eventually asked me if I would serve as a board of directors. And I was really, really humbled and honored. And I accepted that because, and that's why I'm so, I'm like salt. I'm in everything. Man, I want to be at BIMS week. I want to be at this. I want to be at that because it's at this stage in my career as I go towards the second half of my career, being around future marine scientists and being able to mentor them has been refreshing for me.
So what kind of responsibilities do you have as a member of the board?
Well, so the board of directors, remember, BIMS is a multi-million-dollar organization. So we see budgets. We had a meeting at Scripps in August looking at strategic plans. So we're involved in that. So, of course, strategic planning in some of the pillars of BIMS. So you will see a lot. Of course, we are part of the tidal wave program. That's a pillar. You have the BIMS immersion program teaching young people to scuba dive. So we have these different aspects in the specific time we are in now. We work with the staff of the leadership of BIMS. So Dr. Tira Moore, we work with Jermaine, the COO. We work with Dr. Gaines. We work with everyone because our concern is, can we sustainably carry on BIMS. So BIMS depends a lot on NSF grants and grants like that. But in this current era and time, and you know what I'm talking about, how can BIMS not fade out? And so I myself, Mark Lasavio, the chair of the board of directors, we have some really, really capable folks at the board of directors, and our task is to really, really think, really, really focus, work collaboratively with the leadership of BIMS, and really continue BIMS. Because if you think about it, if BIMS fail, then it's easily 200 to 300 people that will have no safe space. 200 to 300 very valuable Black marine scientists with research, with just a mindset to focus on ocean science. We will lose a safe space for that. So, to be honest, Diedrich, I can't fail. I got to do my part plus some, as well as the other members, to really, really. And I'm fortunate because when I have conversations with the leadership of BIMS staff, man, they're all in. They're 110% in for this organization. And so I am as well. I am committed and dedicated to see the success of BIMS.
I'm very thankful that our leadership are people like you. I mean, very driven, very resourceful, very involved in every single aspect of what we're doing, because we're not able to, or people like me aren't able to have opportunities to travel, do research, and do
Yes.
different things without this kind of support and without knowing. Because at the end of the day, I don't have people in my family who do this kind of stuff. I didn't grow up around scientists, and even you guys just having the information boards of there's an internship here you can go to, there's a scholarship here you can get. All those kind of tools are very important to me, and even having BIMS supporting this show and giving me things to help me create my content and have people like you on here makes me really happy and really excited that you guys exist and are an organization. So thank you so much for that.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. Hey,
And
I
so
always go through. So you ask about vibes and good vibes. Hey, I got Mr. Bob Marley back there, and of course the great Muhammad Ali back there, and those are motivational pieces for all the haters. Hey, I got Muhammad Ali up there, and for all the negativity, I got Bob Marley up there. So it's you learn these as you get older. You learn these, and like I said, mentorship for me has been a refreshing boost to my career. And so, I'm a boots on the ground guy. We have members on the board that are the go-getters for they know someone and funding. They have many expertise and they provide opportunities. I just want to make sure that when I'm around y'all, for example, BIMS week here in a couple of weeks, what are y'all needs? And so I am kind of like a mediator that will take that information back to the board of directors. Hey, we need to, sustain this. We need to, focus on this opportunity. Hey, we need this new opportunity. BIMS, if you look at it, so we got ocean, AI, justice. BIMS keeps up with the time. So if you've been following BIMS, for example, the website last year and this year looks totally different. You talk about a souped up upgrade. And so, I'm thankful that we have staff members like Jermaine. Jermaine, he is like so articulate and, into that. His mind thinks, 5 steps ahead. And I have conversations, you know, with, these BIMS leaders. And I can tell you, they're 110% committed to focus on the success. And that trickles down to you guys. I can't wait for you to experience a BIMS week. It will totally change your mindset moving forward. You will want to succeed because of what Black and Marine Science, the opportunities that offers. And here's the thing: you can walk up to Dr. Tiara. I always tell her when I first see her, "Hell, there go my favorite CEO." How many CEOs can you walk up to and have a conversation with, you know, laugh and cut up with? I mean, I know one. I only know one. I'm thankful that this space is a safe place for us as marine and ocean scientists.
Yeah, I believe that the whole BIM staff is very personable. I mean, when I went to BIMS week for the first time, or I guess for the first BIMS week last year, Dr. Tierra came up to me and was like, "Oh, I've heard about you," and I was like, almost like scared and dumbfounded. Like I had no idea what was going on. I'm like, "Am I in trouble? Like, what's going on?" Because I'd never had somebody come up to me like that, and it not been like, "Oh, you did something wrong" or whatever. She was just pretty much saying like, "I've seen what you do. I see what's going on, and I'm really like happy you're here." And that was just so different for me because um the whole thing, it was like a family reunion, but it also had like science and all that stuff. And that was very different for me because personally, when I was younger, my family reunions weren't great for me. So being in like a family reunion setting with science, I was so like, I have no idea what's going on. I'm overwhelmed. But then as the days went on, I really got a chance to enjoy it and I was able to feel welcomed. And I was a little put off at first because it was something new, but then I was able to really enjoy it. And I was really happy that there was a safe place to where I was able to move into. Like people were there to let me know what was going on, help me out with everything, and that was super awesome. So I'm way more hyped to go into it this year because I feel like I know how to prepare myself and get the most out of it.
Yeah, I agree. It's just the ease at which you can speak to anyone plays a huge role. As you know, we are in spaces where sometimes, or most of the times, folks don't really care about what you do or who you are. But I can tell you, during BIMS week, it is totally opposite. There's no way you can sit and eat or sit somewhere on your own and not have someone, hey, say, hey, what's going on? Do you drink? What are you doing? Let's do something. Or, so you'll see that a lot at BIMS, and it's more personable. And you're right, it's more family, it's more community, and that speaks a lot to the organization.
So what's the difference in camaraderie when it comes to working with an organization like BIMS versus working at the school being like the leader of the biology department? How is that different and how is it similar?
I'd say, no, my work here is mostly driven by my mindset. I mean, so it starts from myself going down to my colleagues, and it's a lot of leadership, and it's nonstop leadership. But the entire focus is students. So that's where that's the purpose. And it's also with my career too, being almost complete 11 years and now finding my purpose, which is mentorship, which, I have to attribute to Dr. Tira Moore for helping me to get that way. Also, for here at University of Tennessee Southern, we have a great leader in our chancellor, Dr. Linda Martin. Very, very mind focused and mindset on student success. Now, transferring that to BIMS, I actually kind of use both. University of Tennessee Southern here, what I've learned here, and definitely what I've learned at Black and Marine Science, because my focus now is on the human impact, you know, is on the human being first. Now, that doesn't deny that we have a lot of issues with having more melanin or less melanin. All right. It does, there will always be that aspect of it. But I try and look at the bigger picture, you know, student first and the mindset with, you know, trying to be less biased. But at the same time, I acknowledge that someone who's a Black marine scientist has a little bit more trials than other aspects, right? So, okay, how can we all get through those trials? What are things we can do? What are things we can mitigate? What are things, some strategies? How can we synergize? All this that we have to offer. For example, here's a good one. Do you know that the BIMS issue with 10 Black in Marine Science Authors. It was recently published in June in the ICB journal. Where have you ever heard that happening? 10 black marine scientists with scientific publications in a pretty top journal, and that's just the first issue. The goal is to sustain more issues. So I'm hopeful that, okay, we got 10 authors for this first issue. How can we transfer that to have 15 authors in the second issue? Now, hopefully, you know what that will lead to. Imagine having a scientific paper in marine science where all the cited references are black marine scientists. Can you imagine the impact of that? I mean, that's something that hasn't been done and hasn't been seen. But guess what? BIMS has a way of being the first to do a whole lot of things. You know why? Because it's innovation. They're very innovative staff members. They stay trending. And so I love that about BIMS.
Can I be in the next paper?
Hey, and that's the thing. It's everyone has to offer scientific research. And scientific research, if you go through the issue, the staff members, so Lynette has one on the joy factor. You will hear that a lot in BIMS, the joy factor. Can you imagine publishing something, the joy factor, on joy? Because many spaces, we don't come to these spaces with joy. When's the last time you went to a conference with joy? No, you go to a conference with a lot of stress, right? You got to present, you hope you remember everything. What if someone asks me this question? Where to go, which talk to go to? It's a lot of stress, but this is not that conference. I have at least one, two, three, four. I'm in 4 different talks and I'm not stressed about it. That doesn't mean I'm not practicing them, preparing for them, but I feel a little bit, I feel joy in being able to present 4 talks at one conference. That has never happened in my life. So that's exciting in a sense, And so I'm hoping as well, since myself and Dr. Tiara were invited co-editors of this first issue. Hey man, I'll be asking everyone, hey, so what do you do? What's your research? Hey, BIMS issue number 2 next year. All right, start prepping for that. Yeah, because I would love to. We had 10 authors. I would love to have 15 to 20 in BIMS issue number 2, and it's a better experience as well. No reviewer ripping you and making you feel very small. No, it's very, very productive reviews as well.
I love hearing that. I literally have a paper that just got returned to me a few weeks ago, and I had 5 reviewers loved everything I did, and I had like the 6th reviewer that was just, this was done terrible. I don't like this. Da, 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 da. And then it's crazy feeling that, because in that moment I was so happy that I was proud of my own work, and I had seen that what other people said, that they could make me feel small. But I can't imagine if I didn't have the leadership of people that are close to me, whether it's my mentor who helped me through the project, or the other scientists I've worked with in the past who have said, you're good at what you do, you're doing a good job. If I didn't have that, I could feel how that could make you feel small, and that could hurt your experience and really make you be like, man, am I
Yeah.
really as good as this stuff if I want to, and feel almost like an imposter. So I think it's a big deal that you guys are doing that, because I was like, man, I would have rather had somebody else come in and give me some actual feedback, because they'd be like, oh, this sucks. And I'm like, okay, what sucks about it?
Yeah.
No response, no explanation, just, I don't like this. And it's, hey, these paragraphs don't look right. And I'm like, what about them doesn't look right? And so it's just, I think it's a very important part to point out, especially in academia, that when people know, when someone is reviewing you, and especially if they're going to be transparent, like, who reviews, what they look like, who they are, they're going to help you out and do those
Yes,
kind of things. And people
definitely.
who are anonymous people feel like they can do those crazy things. But when there's no anonymity, when it comes to that stuff, then you get what you need to from the reviewers. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you what, the reviewers were mostly BIMS members. So yes, I got back my manuscript with oof, a million things to correct. But my gosh, the final product was, wait a minute, wow, I wrote that? So the reviewers, you know, it's synergy, man. You need, my grandmother used to say, one hand cannot clap. You ever see one hand clap? No, you need, you need both. But that's where I really appreciate BIMS because, you have some integral members in the leadership team that they will be every meeting. It's like a joyous meeting. They don't start the meeting, well, today we're meeting. No, I mean, they're popping. We're just like that. I mean, we start, we're invigorated, we're excited, just to have this going. BIMS week, of course, is the most important week for the entire year for the BIMS organization because it's a huge, well, fundraising for the organization as well as bringing everyone together, and that is huge. It's an important aspect of, okay, I'm refreshed now from this conference. I got ideas from this conference. I'm gonna set my goals for 2025, and that's important to have.
You mentioned earlier your grandmother, you mentioned your father. How was your family's response to you becoming this scientist, getting a PhD, and doing all the things you do now? Had they ever seen anyone like you come from Trinidad before?
So my family really don't know what I do. As a first generation graduate, they don't really know. My mom knew that I did research on the reefs, but she didn't really know, much details on that. My siblings, they kind of know as well, but they don't know. I can't go and tell them, talk to them about like molecular genetics. All they know is, just the basics. It's important, and the reefs are important to, to monitor and protect, and that's more important to them. Hey, they know I got my PhD, um, but they're not calling me no doctor. It's nicknames or hey, what are you doing? And that's fine. That's fine because I really sometimes a little bit too humble, and I can live with that. I'm good with that. And then sometimes I'm litty. I'm like, what did you call me? No, Mr. Belford was my dad. So make sure and correct that aspect. But they, to be honest, most of them don't really know, but that's just, that's just it. But the most important thing they know is that I'm doing something important that has a big picture to it.
So I'm wondering, when you're done with this next part of your career, do you see yourself staying in America, or would you like to go back home to Trinidad?
I am fortunate to say that I have two homes, um, the United States as well as Trinidad and Tobago. I will always be tied to both. I've been living in the United States longer than I've lived in my birthplace. So I'll always be tied to Trinidad and Tobago just because of the research there and my mentality as to continue that research. But what I'm seeing is that slowly there are more persons there interested in the work, and so there's where the mentorship steps in. So I will connect with the mentorship there as well as continue with the mentorship here because the techniques are important. For example, during BIMS week, of course, environmental DNA is a huge thing. It's, I guess, the sexy thing in science right now. And so that needs to, I need to know more about it. I need to start my project on it, and then I need to mentor the students to learn this technique as well. So I'd say that's for the next 3 to 5 years, and then we see what other technique comes up after. Then I'll have to learn it again and be a part of those who are knowing it and things like that. It's just like AI, right? Now, heck, I just made my first AI exam, and I'm telling the student, hey, in the background, I have like Belford dash AI. So they know, students know that I'm using it. Took a class on it. Can you believe that? They paid for a few faculty here to join an AI instructed class. And so it's here to stay. And so I know the pros and cons. How can I incorporate that into the Generation Z, the Gen Zs? How can I incorporate that to help them better learn? And so it's here to stay. And so I'm, kind of doing that. Now, whatever is the next thing that comes after that, I guess the Gen Alphas and Gen Betas when they come on. So I might probably be retiring by that time. But I'm gonna always stay in mentorship because I just enjoy research and seeing what the students are doing. How passionate they are.
Okay, I love hearing about different professionals, especially the ones that are embracing the new wave of AI and technology. Because I had some professors, especially in undergrad, that were just like, no, we don't use AI. We can't use that stuff. This is wrong. It's bad. It's everything that's wrong with the world. Like, robots are gonna come and blow up my house kind of thing. And I was so like, okay, I won't use it, whatever. And then I got towards the end of my undergraduate career since I just graduated in the past spring. And I started using it more and more, and I realized it just helped me automate so many things that took me so much time to do by hand. Like even some of the things for this show, I use AI for, and it just helps me out so much. And I'm able to put the real human factor times like 10 in the things that I really care about. But then the stuff that's like sending the emails to everyone, it's so much easier to do if I have something automated that helps me get everything together, get all that stuff. And I really appreciate when people are willing to see the change and not get blown by past it and kind of fight against it, but try to move with it and use those tools to help them. And if they if the shoe doesn't fit, they don't. So I really appreciate that about you as a researcher and scientist.
Yeah, you got to. I mean, first of all, it keeps me on my toes. I'm Hey, I'm a morning person. I get here 6:30, 6:45 a.m. and I'm pushing. Because when I leave here, whatever time I leave the office, I can say, well, I've done the best that I could today. I didn't get 5 things done, but I did the 4 of them really, really well. And that helps me plan for the next day because man, we're like dust in regards to the time we have, you know, above ground. Because you never know what can happen. Hey, I've just reached my double digit in scientific publications. I'm still behind. I need 10 more, So, my goal is to try and push 2 more each year for the next, 5 years. You've got to set some goals for yourself. And with that being said, you got to set some time for yourself as well. And that's why I like BIMS Week because, you can get a massage, you can go hit the
Yeah.
bliss room. The bliss room was like really, I was all over them teas last year in the bliss room. And the light music. Guess what? Paradise Point in San Diego, there's a beach. Hello, beach walk. Walking is my thing. That's my activity. And that's only because I got a left knee I know it was going to be cold today in Tennessee because that left knee was telling me, So, there are so many things. Man, the surroundings, you can take your morning walks. I hear they got yoga, they got the fitty hour, So I'm going to be a part of all of that because, it's, you got to mentally, take a break to recharge for the mental work. Most of my work is really in academia is mental, the teaching aspect, the prep. That's why sometimes I just leave my office and I go to the cafeteria and, I see my students. Hey, are you given problems? Did you turn in that assignment? Ooh, you were sleeping in class. Ooh, you didn't come to class today? Oh, man, that's a good lunch you got there. I guess you weren't sick. I shoot the breeze with the students because that's important for them to realize that, yes, in the classroom, I might rule with an iron fist, but at the same time, out of the classroom, I'm down to earth human being. I just want, I just demand a high status success for you guys. What do you want? Filet mignon lecture or hamburger steak lecture? You know what I'm saying? I bring the top because I do a lot of work in the summer. Okay, what can I use different in teaching? What can I do different in my assignments? I'm always trying to improve that learning aspect, to be more effective. I'm telling you, I'm just centered around student mentorship. I'm just centered around that now because I think the first 10 years of my career in academia was getting settled in and figuring out, okay, I'm doing this, and that. But through workshops, BIMS week, great workshops. How do I set up my website? How do I beef up my LinkedIn? These things I also transfer to my students. Biology majors here, certain classes, upper level classes, they got to have their CVs, they got to have their LinkedIn account, they got to have these different things. It all prepares them for the next step if they choose grad school or not.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to do that. I mean, I didn't even learn how to make a resume for myself until after school. Like I had
Yes,
a lot of I got a lot of mentorship with CVs and things like that, but it's just there's so many different aspects of things you have to learn and then figure out when it comes to a professional, whether industry, academia, and all those kind of things. I think it's so important that you're letting them know. Yeah, get that LinkedIn together. That's important
yeah,
because I found out more than not it has been for me, and I'm glad. And people like I'll get emails from people about my show or whatever, and they're like, "Oh yeah," like, and they'll have information about me, and they'll say, "Hey, does this look good?" And it's like all stuff from my LinkedIn, and I'm like. I'm really glad that that's there because that would have
yes,
sucked to have to go back and think of what have I done the last 5, 6 years in science. It's just you don't want to do that. It helps out a lot. I mean, that's how I got the whole Lemoyne Owen College thing wrong because I was looking at that on your LinkedIn. It completely skipped over where you were working at now. So it's just I think it helps so much with just getting what you do across faster,
yes,
and also so people can just look that stuff up because I mean, when people will see you and they hear these cool things about you, they're gonna want to see what you got going on.
yes, yes. I got to give a shout out here. You know who said I need to beef up my LinkedIn? Dr. Raven Baxter. And you've had her on your talk as well, and
Hmm.
of course, she gave it her talk on SciComm last year at BIMS, the BIMS talk, and that was the one thing I think Dr. Baxter is so cool. She literally provided, hey, 15 minutes, of her time to look at, side communication for you. So, like, she looked at my website and everything, and she said, hey, everything looks great. The big thing is consistency. All right, if you're shooting something out every Tuesday or every week or whatever, make sure you keep doing that. But her biggest thing for me was, hey, beef up your LinkedIn. And so, you know, that's what I've, that's what I was able to, one of the takeaways from her, an experienced scientist in SciComm.
Absolutely. I mean, I use a lot of her things. She's one of my mentors with the show, and
Yes,
she's helped me out a ton on being consistent and different little things to use and like helping me stay motivated to do it. Because for me, a lot of this is community based, and I've talked about this on other shows, but I really just want to highlight other people's stuff. It's not for my own personal glory. I just love to hear like to talk to you guys, and just it's just so much fun because especially like with BIMS week coming and everything, I get to meet some of these people, hear their story, and then when I see you there, I'm like, hey, you used to play soccer. Let's go run up and down real quick. Like we get to do stuff like that. And I think that's just so important to being a good scientist is knowing how to communicate it. And for
yes,
me, it was always this thing. I love science very much. And my dad's interested in it, but my mom, it was always hard for her to understand because she doesn't really like school. So she's like, okay, they're using these words, it's too much jargon. I can't follow. And then my dad's like, I get a good bit of this, but some of this is going too much. So for me, I
yes,
always try to make sure that if I'm giving a talk, if I'm making a presentation, anything, I run it past my mom, and if my mom can keep up with it and my
Gotcha.
dad, I'm like, this is good. And
Yes.
because I want it to be informational to where somebody who's like at your level or a professor or my level is like, I got a lot of good from that, but also someone who has no idea what's going on can understand my whole talk and what I'm talking about without going to 7 or 8 peer-reviewed papers and studying beforehand. It's like, you're trying to make it easy for your listener, not hard. Like, I don't want
Yeah.
them to be like, man, I need to go do homework just to understand he said up there for the last 30 minutes. Cause it's like, I'm wasting everyone's time if I'm doing all that.
Yeah, I got you. Hey, one thing I
So
gotta ask
one,
you. I'm sorry. Hey, you got a cool your avatar on IG. You got a really
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
That's. I just wanted to highlight that. It's like, whoa, this is really cool. When I grow up, I want to have one just like that.
You talk about the logo for the show?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, that was made by my radio station, WMNF 88.5. They're the ones who I'm partnered with them, and they put out my show on Spotify and all these different things
Okay,
for me. And yeah, they created that for me. I told them this is what I want. I want to look like this. I want to be a black diver, and then they created it for me. And I'm like, this is so cool. So I'm able to like sell shirts with it on there. I
it's
have like
legend.
my
That's
shirt that I
legend.
wear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
legend. I'm telling you. Yeah.
So when I'm up on this panel talking, and on Wednesday, I'll have my shirt on and everything, and be excited. And so people, you want to buy? Yeah, you like this shirt? You can buy one
Perfect.
right here. You can buy it
Perfect.
right
Yeah.
here. It's right here. So
Special discount for
yeah,
all speakers on the show.
yeah, 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 exactly. I'm like, I lowered the prices already and everything, so there's
Yeah.
no excuse now. You guys gotta, because I want this to be for you guys. I'm not even making that much back on the shirts now. I just want people
Gotcha.
to have it because I just love getting the word spread and people enjoying seeing it. So we had a little ad in there. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanna pivot into something new. We talked a lot about science and about your mentoring, about what you grew up with, but I want to go into something I'm really interested in, and the nerd side of you. Every scientist has this nerd part of them. That's something that we call dork or we're goofy about. What is your nerd moment? What is your nerd interest?
Well, I tell you what, I always find myself when I'm on the reefs with whoever is helping me, definitely when I'm on the reefs with students, I always start picking up stuff. Hey, phylum, what kingdom? Phylum, Echinodermata, Cnidaria, what kingdom? What phylum? And then the students are like, I can't remember that. Okay, body symmetry, radial, bilateral. So I get into high school high school teaching nerd out professor. And so I take students from here to Trinidad. The pandemic kind of slowed it down. But when we're on the reefs, I do that all the time and it drives them nuts because they know they have to take an exam over it and it drives them nuts. Also, to be honest, so when I visit my research sites in Trinidad, I am always looking for the local cuisine. And so it's usually roadside stuff. And then when I see it, I'm like, oh my gosh, hey, I gotta have this. And I'm like a little kid, and then I forget the students are there looking at me. Like, why is he acting like he just got like cotton candy or something like that, a lollipop or something like that? That may be not be a nerd out, it may be a foodie, a food nerd, food desire. But I think the nerd out for me is going through the progression of kingdom, taxonomic hierarchy, kingdom, phylum, what class, what order to my students while on the reefs. And so it's like outdoor classroom, informal science. They learned in a lecture, but here I am, just picking up rocks, boulders. Ooh, there go a brittle star. What kingdom? What phylum? Ooh, there go a sponge. Kingdom? What phylum? And they're just looking at me like, oh my gosh, we didn't come all the way to Trinidad for our class. I'm sorry. Hey, you don't learn, you spend 4% or less of your life learning inside. But the remainder you learn outside, outdoor science, informal science. And that's what I try to get through to them because I tell them all the time, when your little future kids come, every kid has a science project. They gonna come to you and like, can you help me with my science project? You know what that means? The parents are doing the science project. You gotta be ready. Yeah, you gotta be ready. My little granddaughter Amaya had a science project on coral reefs. Guess what? Her parents was like, we don't know nothing about that. So can you help her? And I brought her up here. I start, offloading all the different, specimens. Yeah, you want this one, you want this coral, you want this shell, you want this here, you want, shoebox sands. They put it all, make the reef in a shoebox. Man, hey, you want me to paint this for you? You gotta be prepared. Your little young one will have a science project. And who gotta do it? You, the parent.
So what's some of the coolest things you've seen on your reefs? I mean, you talked about like the brittle stars and different things. If you give me like four or five things, like the coolest things you've seen on the reefs that you've been working on.
I'll put, oh my gosh, there's so many. Key Largo, I've seen when I saw ctenophores for the first time, the comb jellies with their bioluminescence. I thought that was legit because we have them in lecture when we do biodiversity, and I replaced the original photo from the book with my photos. I've seen vase sponges while diving in Key Largo. This wasn't research or anything, it was just an opportunity. So, I mean, like 2 meters across. So huge. In Trinidad, it can be anything from different types of mollusks to, for me, I think there it's the slate pencil sea urchin. For my almost 20 years research there, I've only seen it twice. The first time I got fuzzy photos, but in this recent BIMS issue publication, I finally got a good photo. And I see anything there from, it just depends on when I visit. I've seen comb jellies, I've seen cannonball jellies. What else? Just different, I'll tell you what, zoantherians, which are anemone-like cnidarians, which I've taken a liking to with respect to molecular genetics. It's a kaleidoscope of colors. I mean, you can have the orange, the greens, the different greens, the grays, the browns. My task has been to use molecular genetics to identify them. And so during my master's, I've been calling one species this, one species that. Guess what? It's really 4 species, but I never really had the opportunity to like discern them using molecular genetics. And so I see the Paleothora species, the Zoanthus species, but now I know the separation. There's actually 2 other species within. And recently, for a publication in 23, I've distinguished one more even further using molecular genetics. So I'm biased to them, looking at them. And in the Red Sea, I can tell you, last but not least, the clownfish and sea anemones that I work with there. When I did my PhD, I did a couple of years working on the two-band clownfish and the giant sea anemone there. And they're so, I mean, marine organisms are so many variations, so dynamic. And that's just part of it. We're covered by 70%, you know, water. So that means there are a lot of, ocean species. So it's very important for us to continue research on that. And so, that's why I love ocean science.
Thanks for that. I mean, I'm about to look up some of those species you were talking about because I've seen comb jellies, I've seen ctenophores, or I guess it's the same thing, but I've seen salps and different things like that in the water in California, and that was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen diving because I was diving there this summer, and it was like these little balls, like just floating through the water, attached to each other. I'm holding on to them, and they're like kind of hard too. So I was like, weird. It was like a snake. It was almost like a snake, and
Yes,
it was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen in the ocean. I was like, this is really cool, and I'd never experienced that diving in the tropics, but I had that like in that at the like temperate like Mediterranean kind of water, and it was very
yes,
very very different. It was really cool. So I love seeing the different invertebrates and things like that because I think it's it's nice to have appreciation of that. I mean, I'm a shark guy, like big fish, things like that. But
Okay.
when I can see small stuff that really gets my mind going, like, man, that's a weird thing. How does that even
Yes.
exist? That's really cool for me.
I've seen, and here's the thing, every time I visit the reefs, sometimes, I usually go with my helpers when we're doing surveys, but sometimes on days I just go to collect samples for molecular analysis. And some of those days I go by myself. I'm just on the reefs by myself. And because I know how to be still, Dr. Dawn Phillip always told me, just be still and wait. And I see different things. Every time I go, some of the sites I have, I feel like I am the first person seeing this at this site at this particular time. Because I am actually one of few people doing research at these particular sites on the northeastern coast of Trinidad. And so, you know, hey, I got to do it real quick, and that's because of the potential 100% destruction as a result of a future multi-billion-dollar port that they want to build there.
Mm.
Got to work fast, get them publications out so that they have the information.
Absolutely. So one thing I was super interested in looking up about you, and I want to hear your how you got into doing was co-editing continental and diasporic Africa and science research. How did you get into working with that publication? I guess that's your publication. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but can you explain it to me because it sounds super cool.
It's a newsletter. My
Okay.
my mentor, my PhD mentor, Dr. Melody Russell, is part of that. Her mentor, so I was her first PhD student to graduate, and then her mentor is Dr. Mary Atwater, and these are like really big names in science education. And so I got into the group, the Kadasi group, and eventually as a steering committee member. So eventually with the group, you do different things. So I eventually became the publication manager for that newsletter, annual newsletter, and I did it for 9 years. So you can serve 3 terms as that, and I did that, and unfortunately they couldn't keep me for another three-year term. So now I'm the treasurer. So I'm still with Kadasi. I'm
Okay.
just different things because of the terms you have to serve. But that's a really it's the oldest research interest group in the NARS organization, so National Association of Science Teacher organization. And so I'm still on the steering committee as well. And that's how
Sweet.
that's how I did that. That
Okay. Okay. I have one last question for you. What do you want the overall scope and impact of your work to be? I know you've done a lot of work with Coral. I know you're doing a lot of work with BIMS and mentoring and even just mentoring with the school you're working with now.
Yes.
What's the overall impact you want to have when you're done with everything and when you're done with all your work, be like, man, Stanton really did that. He really killed it at that. What's your coup de grace for all of this?
I don't look at it it's not for me. I look at it as, just training or passing on my knowledge to the next generation. I look at it as okay, a future student should be able to eventually say, you know what, I was mentored well, and now they're in that position, they'll do the same as well. Because I've had experience with shitty mentors, I mean, really shitty. And I've heard experiences from other students or other professionals. And what I've seen is that we do not want to continue that trend. We're breaking that cycle. And so yeah, it's really not for me. I just actually want to pass it on to others.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here and taking time from your schedule to shoot the breeze with a show host. I really am happy
My
to have you.
pleasure.
This
Yep.
this was awesome.
My pleasure. And can't wait to see you at BIMS Week.
Yeah, me too. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
So everyone, that was Stanton, Dr. Stanton Belford. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, Black Nerds Matter, and give 5 stars on Spotify and follow the show. These are free things you can do to support the channel, and it really helps us out at the end of the day, in the hopes of having me make some money from doing this at some point or another. So thank you so much, everyone. Black Nerds Matter out.